Hi folks, Marty here. Today we're going to take a look at a little painting here in County Down. So I'm going to give it a wee quick sketch here, and then it's an old black and white photograph. So it gives me the opportunity just to interpret how I wish. And remember, it's not so much how what you see, it's how you feel, how a painting makes you feel, or a picture. And you're just trying to capture something of that atmosphere. So, without further ado, I'm using a mechanical pencil, by the way, and I'm just gonna kind of sketch in a few guidelines here. So I'm gonna pop in just a loose horizon. I don't know if you can see that. I'm maybe lean a wee bit heavier, just for your benefit. And don't forget, folks, you can, if you're not interested in watching me sketch this, you can just skip on to the good stuff if you like, straight to the painting and how I go about painting it. But if you want to hang around and get the coffee or the kettle on and just sit and chill out for 10-15 minutes while I sketch this, that's absolutely fine. So that's my horizon line, okay, and then we've got a bit of a path. You see, there's a little cottage right about here. With a wee thatched roof or straw. And then there's the wee chimney, maybe one on both ends. And a couple of wee marks where I'm going to put the windows and doors. And then maybe beside the little cottage there could be peat stacks or whatever for putting on the fire there. It could be all sorts of bits and bobs, It's just an impression, so it doesn't have to be too detailed, okay? So, and then I'm going to just very loosely just drag in the road. And then when the road gets near you, it obviously gets a lot wider. So you're coming down here, and then it's going to turn around about here, and then I'm going to put a bit of an old wall here. I just love these old brick walls and those big high ones. They just leave a lot for the imagination. Though, just wonder what's behind them. What life must have been like 100 years or more ago, and it's that curiosity in us, isn't it? Okay, so that's that, and then maybe the illusion of a road running off here. Okay, and then behind that little cottage, we'll put a field like that. And this is a great way for just framing your little cottage or your house or your object of attention. And you'll probably notice that the cottage is, it's near the golden section, if you like, where the eye's going to be drawn towards it. And obviously, that path going up there will just help to draw the eye. Okay, and then there might be just something running off in the background, some more fields, and maybe something in the distance here. So don't forget, it doesn't have to be accurate, it's just the impression of the thing, and then that field kind of goes up like that. Again, just don't be too precious about the whole thing, just keep it nice and loose. So I'm looking at this here, and then maybe there's a house. Up here, up this. And then we'll bring that hedgerow kind of like this here. And then maybe there's a bit of a wall kind of going up here. Some of these old photographs, it's so hard to understand or work out what's going on. So you've got to use a wee bit of your license there, you know, to sometimes you're better just sitting and looking at the picture and just trying to work out what's going on. Okay, so there's a wee bit of a bridge here. And it's just trying to make it look like there's something that could go under it. Obviously for folks who lived here, they would understand what's going on. Especially farmers or people from the farming community. You know, they look at fields in a way that non-farmers would look at them. They'll see all the tram lines and so on, and how neat they are, and you know, it's all part of that community, I suppose. Whereas the folk like us, it's neither here nor there. But so that's it. That's it, kind of roughly sketched in. All right, and then I'm going to have let's see, some trees and stuff coming up here. Okay, don't be too precious about this, because you're going to let the paint do the work for you. All right, if you draw in a perfect tree, you know, you're going to be restricted to have to paint that in. But if you kind of do it loosely, and if you have a shaky hand, you know, you just use that to your own advantage. Obviously, you don't need to have a steady hand for this kind of thing, you know. Okay, that's giving us something to work with now. So there we go. That's our basic sketch done. So what we're going to do now is I just have a wee mixture of brushes here. I'm going to show you. I'll dip in and out of different ones, you know. Some mops, some rounds, say 16, but that all depends on what brand and so on that you're using. As to, you know, what size a 16 or an 18 is, they can all differ. But and then just get yourself a wee spray bottle. So what we're going to do is, rather than soak the page, which I seem to do quite a lot, we're just going to spray it. But before we do that, I want to mix up a few colors here. So I'm just grabbing a bit of blue, and then maybe a wee bit of neutral tint, and then we'll just give it a wee spray just here and there. So it'll be a bit of hit and miss, really, you know, or hit and miss, should I say. So we're just going to drop that in like that. Give it an wee spray there, and a wee bit of neutral tint. With a wee bit of maybe a alizarin in it, just to warm up that bit there, just for a bit of shadow underneath those clouds there. We'll just bring that on down here. So we're going for a kind of a misty effect here. And what we'll do is we'll add a wee bit of green to our mix. I'm just grabbing a wee bit of lemon yellow there, and maybe a wee bit of cobalt into that. And I'm just gonna give the impression that there's fields and so on up here. I'm just cutting in around that house there. And I'm going to start just dragging in a wee bit of warmth into that. Maybe a wee bit of ochre. So basically this is just a foundation wash. I'll just paint over those pillars. And don't forget, if you've went over anything that you would rather preserve, just get your tissue there and just dab it out. Okay, just a wee bit of light red into that mix there. It doesn't have to be perfect when you're painting these in, just, you know, kind of some rough painting technique. It just helps, you know. And then I'm going to put a slightly darker color over here where we're going to have those hedgerows and so on. When you're experimenting with a painting, you're better doing it a couple of times just to kind of work out where you're going to put everything, you know. And then that was where the kind of wall was there. Okay, so that's not bad for a foundational wash. So I'm just going to clean out and brush, and always start off with your big washes with your mop brush or something big. And then what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take the hair dryer to this and just give it a quick dry. Okay, so that's us. We've dried that off. What we're going to do now is we're going to, I think, just work on the background here and just start moving down and around the house and start pulling the picture together, really. So I'm going to grab a wee brush for that, and then because we're still working on that distant kind of area, we want to have a sort of like a misty bluey grey color. And if you want to, you can just give it a wee Just a wee gentle spray. Because it is in the distance, it is a kind of a misty day, you know. And this will help to give that impression. So we're just kind of, we're letting the brush just dance around here a wee bit. So you're just kind of, you're just indicating that there's trees there, you know. And then, so I want to do this bit that's coming along here. So I'm going to just darken that just a little bit, or a bit more with the stronger kind of pigment. Okay, and then just dropping a wee bit of that dark stuff at the bottom of those just to make it look like there's some kind of light hitting that. And then we're going to come into this field just behind the little cottage here. So just a big swipe there. And then we're going to cut around the cottage. So we're basically painting negative space here. By painting around the cottage, you're indirectly actually painting the cottage. Okay, and what I might do is just throw a wee drop of ochre into that there, and then just kind of give it a bit of a swipe there. And that's just to show that they, as you're getting closer, things are more saturated and warmer in tone. And if it's not to your liking, you know, you can come back later on with a few glazes. Okay, now I'm getting into some stronger color. I'm gonna just drop that in here and there. And just paint around those colours. And I'm going to just drop some dark stuff in there, some thick paint. I'm just, by doing that, I'm just going to kind of frame the wall, or where the wall's going to be. And then what you're doing is you're painting nonsense, I suppose, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's like the eye doesn't know that. It's kind of telling the brain that there's fields there and so on. This is where it's good to switch maybe to a bigger brush. If you want to do something that's quite fast and loose. You don't want to get bogged down in detail at all. So I'm just getting into ultramarine and burnt sienna and burnt umber and that kind of thing. Just nice kind of browny, strong brown colours. That's why it's good to have a wee scrap piece of paper, kind of handy. Okay, so here I'm gonna start just mixing up a really dark color here for the wall, and obviously there's grass and stuff here, you know, just on the edge here. So we can come back later and throw a wee bit of green in that. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this down here. Whoever lives in that house there, obviously it's maybe not kept as well as it used to be, and there's kind of grass and everything growing up all over the place. This is quite dark here. It's just indicating that it, you know, might be in shadow or so that's all I'm doing. Just paint a wee bit of nonsense here and there, you know. You're just leaving something for the imagination to work out. What I'm going to do here in this area, I'm just going to go in with some lighter grassy color. I don't want to be too summery looking, because that is a bit of a winter scene, you know. So you want your colors to be muted. Something like that there it'll do. And just kind of drop it in here and there. So you're not painting every bit of grass, you know. You don't want to do that. You start getting into too much detail and the whole thing just becomes just overworked and over labored, and it just takes the joy out of it, you know. You don't want that. A wee bit of splashing here and there. Okay, it's starting to come together. And what I'll maybe do is get a wee thinner brush with some nice strong colours in it. And then just, you know, just make a few wee marks here and there, you know. Could be anything. But not too much. Just a wee bit here and there. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to, if you see any puddles there that, you know, have the potential to run on you, just mop them up, get a wee tissue, and just touch them with the tip of your brush, and that'll just clear that up for you. It's coming along. I know it looks like a bit of a mess, but it's the wee touches you do after this that kind of brings it all together. So I'm just looking at it, and this looks like it's just clouds and stuff that have not been painted very well when it was meant to be. When it's meant to be, should I say, fields up in the distance there. So at this stage, what you could do is you could just mix up a very light color, and this is what we're talking about earlier on about glazes. So remember, yellow, one of your yellows or your blue will give you that green there. Keep it nice and loose. Okay, let's have a wee go at this. All right, that helps. Bring it on down there. Don't be rubbing the paper too much, or you'll just start to lift paint up. Okay, so at this stage it's looking a bit messy, a bit scrappy, a bit amateurish looking, and that's all part of my cunning plan, because it's what you do with that. A lot of people would probably at this stage just rip it up and throw it in the bin as another one of their disasters, but you know, with any painting, it's that extra 10 minutes or so that's going to make the difference. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start pulling things together a bit. So what I want to do is I want to maybe work around the trees here and so on that we talked about earlier on. So I'm just going to go back to this brush. This is a good wee brush. It's nice and long, and it's got a nice point on it. So I'm going to mix up a bit of a tree color. When I say tree color, you know, you're talking about dark browns and so on. So ultramarine and burnt umber and all that kind of stuff. And you don't want it so dark that, you know, it just, you know, contrasts too much with what you've already done. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, if that was a tree there, just don't forget, try and make your paint thick enough that it doesn't just disappear on you as soon as you hit the paper, you know. Okay, so what you could do now is you could go to a thinner brush there and start, you know, just dragging out wee bits of branches. And just wee wiggles and squiggles and all that kind of stuff. So I do this sorry, by doing this, you're actually just framing the picture. So I want to quite a stiff mix here, and you know what's a good idea? Let me just grab a. I'm looking for a wee bit of scrap paper here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mix up my paint, and I want to just practice a wee bit here. When I say practice, you're just prepping the consistency of paint. Okay. All right, that'll probably do there, and then we're just kind of, you know, dragging that over the painting here and there. Just give the impression of little fine branches. And then we'll go into our mix again. This would be a great opportunity just to use your rigger. Okay, that'll do that one. And then we're going to move over here now, and we're going to pop a few in here. So again, just strong colours, your ultramarine, your burnt umbers, all that kind of stuff, nice and thick. So at this stage you might be tempted to ask me what kind of trees are those that you're painting, but to be honest with you, I'm just painting a bit of nonsense really, just giving it the impression that it is a tree. And if you study trees and look at them long enough, you know, you begin to get an idea of what you're trying to achieve or where you're going. If you get bogged down in too much detail, the whole thing will just look rigid and overworked. I would rather look at a painting that leaves something to the imagination, leaves you kind of wondering what's going on there, what's behind that, what is that, you know, and then, you know, when you look at it in different light, you'll find that it, you know, you'll see things that aren't there. It's just how the mind works. So I'm just going to come down the side of these here as if the light's hitting them. So we're going to have our light coming this direction, so the sun will be up here and it'll be moving this direction here. And I'm just going to touch that here and there, just to give the impression that maybe the sun's hitting it and so on. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put on a bit of shadow here and there. So it's just a case of mixing up anything that's indicative of shadow, anything like purpley, anything along that line will work great. purpley blues. It's just a case of experimenting with what you have there. Okay, it could be a bit darker, but we'll maybe keep it for here, the road. Alright, so basically the sun's coming from here, so shadows will be cast here, you know, so we'll just drag that. And all this stuff here around the edge of the road. And maybe trees are going across like that in shadow. And I'm just going to make that a wee bit darker, that shadow there. And this is going to be up around where the trees, the base of the trees kind of come in contact with the hedgerows and so on. So just trying to get that dark enough. And then maybe we'll throw a bit of shadow across the path here. It's kind of a good way to just seal your picture. Okay. And what we'll do is maybe we'll just have a few wee tracks and stuff coming down here. So by the time you start getting those branches and trees and all on there, you know, anything that you didn't like here is already pushed back, so it is. So that's coming on. Maybe I'll throw a few wee finer branches in a bit later on, but what I want to do now is dry that off and then maybe turn my attention to the cottage. Okay, so we're onto the cottage now, right? Overcast day, so you don't want it to be too vibrant and standardish, you know. Okay, so if you're doing the thatched part of the house, you're going to use a yellow ochre, but put a wee bit of if you have any dirty paint there, you can throw that in there just to muddy that colour. You don't want it to be too garish looking. Just going to switch to a slightly bigger brush for this one. That's where I like the synthetic brushes. They're just a bit stiffer, you know, a bit more responsive. I'll just give that a wee second there just so that dries off on me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a wee bit of grey down here on the pillars, just to knock that back a bit. So it's just kind of breaking down your picture, you know, using your foundation washes, put on your big washes, and then just start to build it up. Don't get too detailed too quick. You want to just build a picture, and as you're building it, you're getting a better idea of the overall painting and how you're pulling it all together. So what I'll do is I'll put a wee bit of burnt umber into that mix for the cottage roof, and we'll just drop it in just down at the bottom here. And then we can come back later on with a bit of shadow underneath that, and that'll just help it sit better. So what we'll do now is we'll go into our wee shadow colour again. Remember, it's one of your blues there, and a wee bit of alizarin crimson. And we'll just drop that under like this here. And obviously that side of the wall actually is going to be in shadow, so I think we'll just drop that in as well there, or just block that in there. And then I'll just run that off like that, as if it's the shadows being cast along the hedgerows at the side of the house there. So what we're going to do is grab a wee bit of a dark colour here. It could be the colour you even used for your trees, and just kind of drop it in like that there. Okay. Again, don't be too precious. You're not trying to paint doors here, you're trying to just give the impression. If you overwork it, it'll just not look great at all. But sometimes if you paint childishly, like a child, so to speak, it just looks more professional, and it just looks a bit more considered, you know. So I kind of like that dark colour there. What we do is just have a wee look around the side of that cottage here, and just kind of pop a wee bit in here and there, just to bring a wee bit of detail and definition. And it basically helps that stand out. In fact, I might even drop some down the side of that house there, the wee cottage there, just to make it look like there's a tree there, but it also is a device that you can use just to frame something. And then what we can do is some of that dark colour, we can just little dabs and stuff around here. It's all about just giving the impression that there's something going on there. Maybe a few wee dark bits here. So if something's looking a bit muddy, if you go in with something very dark and contrasting, I guess, it really does help just to lift it. So that's it, it's starting to come together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my wee rigger brush. And that's a brush, must be goodness knows decades old, this one here. It started off a lot thicker, and I got a razor blade and just trimmed around it. I think the brush was about £1 or the equivalent, or near enough $1 at the time, you know. There's some places, there's some aspects of painting you need really good brushes, and there's just other aspects of it that, you know, you don't. Where sometimes a cheaper set of brushes you can get, you know, from a cheap store, will do what you're needing it to do. So don't be feeling you need to go out and spend a fortune on brushes. So I'm just dragging up some nice wee branches in here, so on. Make sure you stand back from your painting and just try and have a look at the overall balance of the thing, you know. Right, so there might be kind of like a bit of an old wire fence or something here. Let's pretend there is. Maybe another wee fence going across here. Okay, I think I'm going to drop another bit of a shadow color across there. A wee bit darker like that. So I'm just standing back from the tree and having a wee look now. So that's our detail in there. What we'll do is maybe we'll drop a few wee birds in. If you have any wee mistakes that you've made or anything, you know, you can. That's a good way just to turn them into little birds. And what I'm going to do now is get a wee bit of gouache. Just to make it look like there's smoke coming out of that chimney there. And then what I'm going to do now is get my wee thin brush again and put another wee bit of gouache on that, and anywhere that I think can do with just a wee touch of colour or light or anywhere where light would break through if there's a lot of shrubs and stuff like that. So down here I'm just gonna do a wee bit of this stuff here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sign this little picture. Okay, so it's something that it looks like a signature, but it's like part of the painting there. Just a quick squiggle. Don't have to overdo it, you know. Alright, I think that'll do the job. Obviously these things, you know, you let it sit for a while, go and have a wee cuppa, come back, and there may be something that you want to change or fix. And don't worry if it's not perfect, it's just the impression. So what I'm going to do now is just take this tape off. And you don't have to tape it down, but I like to tape it down just because it gives me an idea of how it would look if it was in a frame or mounted up. So there you go. When you get that tape off, the whole thing just seems to come together, doesn't it? But folks, have a wee go at that. Just, you know, make sure you've got your focus of attention in the right place, and just build up your painting with foundational washes all around it. And then when you get up into the mucky stuff, the dark stuff, you know, that's when it starts to come together. So there you go. That's my wee interpretation of an old black and white picture. So have a wee go at that, and until I see you again, just keep them brushes wet and you take care.